When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. And it won't do no good to be crying out loud, babe, or cursing the sky.
Hi, welcome to Thinking Green. I'm Rana, and elections are past us, for this year at least, but I'm joined today by Keith Kimball, who was a candidate for Board of Education, and we're just kind of going to do an election debrief, I guess, following up on issues that he ran on, and also talking about the election in general and some other stuff that's going on in New London now that we've moved to a different phase. So welcome, Keith.
Hi, how are you?
So before we get into really, the nitty gritty of the subject, do you want to talk just a little bit about how your experience was campaigning this year?
I enjoyed it. I had a better experience this election than the last election 2 years ago in terms of what I had to do, meeting the people, talking to people. My platform didn't really change structurally all that much, but definitely I refined it. I had more ideas, and that part of it was really good. The experience was also unique and unusual. I had never seen an election, and certainly never participated in one in my short 53 years, where one party decided to essentially shun every other party or voter in public that wasn't their own. And I'm talking about the Democrat incumbents, particularly on the city side. They refused to show up to debates. They would not acknowledge any other candidate in public, in the media, on social media. They gave us a silent treatment, like Mean Girls in junior high school. And at the time, I thought that was just funny. I'm like, what a terrible thing to do during an election, and shoot yourself in the foot. But as it turns out, what I didn't realize at the time is that the Democrat Party has exponentially more voters in this town, more money, more volunteers. And even though I got compliments from total strangers about how I ran my campaign, and if there was a better way to do it, I guess I'll figure it out in the next 2 years and implement it. But I really did an excellent job, in my opinion, and a lot of other people agree. But there's just no way mathematically for me to reach, a couple thousand voters without the good faith participation of all the parties. We're supposed to be talking to the people. We're supposed to be engaging with each other, contrasting our ideas, and I guess they just decided, why bother? And I think that had a very chilling effect on our election in general. Less people showed up. Historically, less people showed up to vote for mayor. Yeah. So yeah, weird. I mean, great experience for me. I didn't win. That's fine. I did what I could, spread some information out there, but nothing from my opponents, like I didn't exist.
Well, yeah, and they're missing a lot of the fun of it, if you ask me.
I agree, yeah.
So one of the, one of the issues you ran on, but it's really kind of two issues together, was the parking situation at Jennings School, which you had personally encountered,
Right.
dropping your daughter off,
Right.
and that kind of went into an issue of how do you best share concerns with the city on things that aren't working,
Right.
that the people in the offices with the power might not know.
Right.
So maybe start on like how this started out, and I know this issue started 2 years ago
2
when
years
you were
ago.
running, and has kind of continued. Maybe you want to just give a brief summary of where you've been in the last, 2 years and a few months on this issue.
So during COVID, when the students were invited back into in-person learning, we had a busing crisis. Our contractors couldn't get enough bus drivers to get our students into the district to their schools. And so the district reached out to the families and asked people to voluntarily drive their kids to school, walk their kids to school, bring their kids to school some other way, which naturally increased traffic, right? Because a bus can move like 20 cars worth of people.
Right, it
So-
takes up 3 cars worth of space. Yeah.
It takes up 3 cars worth of space. So so that was very complicated. And the district did a pretty good job working with public safety and the police department to come up with a really good drop-off pattern and pickup pattern, and that was fine. But again, traffic is pretty heavy, and people are in a rush in the morning. I understand that. And it went okay, except that at my school and at other schools as well throughout the district, you would have a handful of people who came up with an alternative solution. They didn't want to wait in the line, and they didn't want to park in a safe, legal parking space. Now, at Jennings, I can't speak for the whole district, but at Jennings, there is ample off-campus parking all around the school. And I was one of those people that didn't go in the drop-off line. I drop off my daughter, I park at a street that comes off of a William Street usually, or on William Street itself, and then I walk the extra 50 yards with my daughter and my cane and all kinds of weather down to the door and wait, and then I come up. But about a half a dozen families decided that instead of that, they were going to double park their cars on Williams at the exit of the drop-off line, and it was the closest, it was the easiest, and unfortunately, that's obstructive. People trying to make a left-hand turn can't see oncoming right-hand traffic easily.
Actually, in the best of times, getting out of that parking lot on William Street is kind of chancy.
It's challenging because the intersection there is, you have the 3-way intersection of the exit, and then right before that, there's another very strange 4-way intersection. And so there's a lot of traffic converging on that one spot. So when you have intense traffic like that for really 15 minutes, something like parking too close to the corner, which isn't legal because it's a safety violation, it's a traffic safety hazard, is a real problem. When you have 2, 3, and 4 cars doing that in a wall, it made it so bad that even the bus drivers were having a hard time seeing around. And they complained eventually the following year. So the first year they saw this problem immediately. They also had a lot of triple parking on Mercer, which is one way in front of Jennings. And so people would just stop their car and park it, and 3 or 4 or 5 cars, and it would block off the entire street. A lot of honking horns, a lot of shouting. And the staff tried to inform people not to do that. They sent out letters and stuff like that, and they directly confronted people. And 2 years ago, Cynthia Ritchie, the superintendent, assured me, and so did Principal Delara, assured me that they had been working with the New London Police Department and the Public Safety Committee to get enforcement down there, but it wasn't happening. We did not see any law enforcement, no warnings, no citations, no police officers present ever. So I asked Principal DeLaura to send out a mass message, and she was brand new to the job, probably was her first week. She didn't know what to do. She sent me to central office. I talked to Cynthia Ritchie. Cynthia Ritchie and I talked for a while. We couldn't agree. She's like, no, I'm not going to do that. It's the police. They should be doing that. I don't see what that'll do. We've told them these people aren't listening to us. That was the narrative at the time. So I went to the Board of Education, gave public comment there, and they talked to the police again. And for about a week, we saw a couple cruisers drive by, not do anything, just drive by, and they weren't watching, which they need to. It doesn't get solved that way. It's something you have to actually be there, be present for, see when it happens, confront them. So the following year, by the end of the following year, well, actually prior to that, I did a letter to the editor of the day about the situation, which was published, and then nothing. I sent emails to counselors and stuff like that. I personally contacted Mayor Passero several times. I contacted the New London Police Department several times. I contacted Police Chief Wright several times. Nothing. Then at spring of last year, I made public comment at the City Council again. And after that, Cynthia Ritchie asked me and Principal DeLaura to meet and discuss a plan for what the district could do to message and keep kids and parents safe at that intersection. And we came up with a good plan. But it stops at their sidewalk. These are public streets. The city and the police have to enforce the streets when the public won't cooperate. So they sent out mass messaging. They put a staff member on the corner to act as a crossing guard, because we don't have a crossing guard at that intersection either. And it's 15 minutes late because they can only go at 8:30 and kids are arriving before that. But they did what they could. They really did. They met with me in good faith. They did what they could. It took a long time, but they did what they could. Nothing. The police chief, Brian Wright, gave up some of his own time and stood on the corner for a couple of days. And I said, we're going to need to follow up this. I even sent him an email. I said, this is going to have to be followed up periodically. And he's like, okay. He said, but you have to help us out. You have to tell your neighbors that this is unacceptable. And I said, are you sure? I sent an email to him. I said, I will do that, but I think we can both agree that that's not the best solution, right? Because things can get heated, and it's not the best solution. Really, it's much better coming from an authority, particularly when Jennings staff had already done the same thing, and they were ignoring them, in some cases being hostile, telling them, you can't tell me to do anything. I said, fine. So I went and I started asking people, I started informing people. I said, look, this is obstructive parking. The school's asked you not to do this. It's dangerous. Please move your car. And pretty much nobody listened to me. Some people started yelling and screaming at me, calling me names. So then I started doing it with my camera out, my cell phone, and the same thing. 3 outcomes would happen when I would start recording. They would either scream and escalate, or they would eventually move, or they would scream and escalate, and then later they would come back to me at that corner and say, you were right, I'm sorry, I didn't like how you approached me, but you're right, this isn't the way to do things. And they would say, and they would agree with me, it's like, where are the police? Why aren't they handling this? Why is an old man with a cane yelling at people here? And I said, well, the police asked me to do that. Principal DeLaura asked me to do that. And she asked me to do that again this year when they were blocking off Mercer, because she had gone out there personally, and others. I watched her, and they ignored her. So I went out there, told them all, both languages, politely. But both languages. There's multiple in New London, but it's Spanish and English, the ones that I speak well enough. I told them that. They wouldn't listen to me. I grabbed an old woman who's kind of acquaintance of mine. We're always there with our kids, and she's Spanish. And I said, could you tell them? Because they're not listening to me. I figured Abuela would certainly get some traction. Nope, nothing from her. But a couple of days later, they stopped. You know, it was just a pride thing. They weren't going to give me the satisfaction, and I'm fine with that. But not on Williams. Oh, no. Just doubling down, screaming. I got called racist. My daughter was hearing from her classmates that her parents thought I was racist. One of those, a man and his daughter, called me racist. He came up later to me and said, I'm sorry, you were right. He shook my hand at that corner. We gave each other a hug. I said, it's no problem now. You know, we're neighbors. It's all, we're fine. You're doing the right thing. You know, I'm sorry it came to this. I really wish the police department were here doing this instead like they should. So that's where it left. A week before election, I emailed all of the city councilors, and I believe all of the Board of Education, and I addressed it to Akil Peck, our Public Safety Committee Chair, and our Citizen Police Liaison, and Chief Wright and Mayor Passer. I said, what are you going to do about this? You need to do this. I've talked to all of you. What's going on? Akil was there when I went before the council for public comment still. And he just sent me thoughts and prayers. Like, I really care about this problem, and but you really need to talk to the police chief about this. Didn't read it at all. Just a robo reply. A day later, they'll say that, well, you're not doing it the right way. We don't have time to read all those emails. But I emailed at least 9 people in city government, possibly 15, and not one of them were reading their emails. Brian Wright didn't get back to me for days and days and days. And again, it was just like, yeah, thanks for the perspective. So that made me angry. And I asked on social media for people to write them about this several times during my campaign the final week. Ignored me. Every single candidate would not interact with me on social media, would not reply to my emails, nothing. Akil eventually just sent more. Oh, I really care about this. I really care about this, but nothing happened. Chief Wright came down a couple of times to watch the corner. But of course, as soon as he leaves, no citations, no warnings, and no plan to follow up. And of course, when he stopped showing, they came back again. And it got worse. They were yelling at me. I was like, I haven't heard any staff member tell me, there's no police telling me to do this. Who are you? So this continued.
I guess you need a badge. Yeah, so now, after Election Day, it's 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, what's the status right now?
Last week, I was invited to meet with Akil Peck, Stephen Fields, and Chief Wright, as well as representatives from the district, the school district. Principal Delara was there, Miguel Gauthier was there, Cynthia Ritchie phoned in, and I was there with my friend Nikki B and my wife, Janine Kimball. So we had all 3 stakeholders, 3 people from each stakeholder, the city, the district, and the community. My 2 associates were silent partners. They listened and they watched, and I spoke. When we opened the meeting, Principal Delara, we all went around, and I opened with basically a summary of what I just gave you. Principal Delara said, yep, that what Mr. Kimball says is accurate. And Chief Wright immediately wanted to scold me and tell me how I confronted people wasn't the right way. And he was welcome to go and show me how to do it professionally or the correct way anytime he wanted to in the past 2 years. I want to repeat, the district went to the city about this problem initially and received no joy. I was not the only person complaining. All right, I saw it at parent engagement meetings. Other people had complained about it. They complained to me. They complained to the police. They emailed. Up until this meeting, there were emails coming in. But all he wanted to talk about was that. So I shut that down. I asked him if I did anything illegal. And he said no. And I, it was just like, well, you're the authority on law enforcement. That's what you're here for today. But they kept trying to bring it on to me. They kept talking about how they didn't have as many complaints about this as other things, and just anything but actually talking about how are we three going to work to solve the issue. Principal Delara gave a plan that what they wanted to do, and it was very good. It was more messaging, more vigorous messaging. Cones and crossing guard up there from the staff and all of that. And they wanted to have Pixels class draw a drawing of what was happening on the corner to help with the social tension that was happening between me and this handful of stubborn, obstructive drivers. All really great things, because now it's starting to affect me and my family. I mean, my daughter is starting to get yelled at. I'm being called a racist. And I asked Brian Wright, Police Chief Brian Wright, what is NLPD's plan? What are you committed to doing about this? And he said, I will send officers when I can. No plan, nothing accountable that I can review or agree with or disagree with. And what I got from Akil and Stephen and Brian was that we don't have enough money, we don't have enough officers, and something much more important could be happening in that time, and I can't commit. They couldn't even commit to, okay, we'll be there this is a 15-minute, and Cynthia Ritchie and Delara emphasized, this is a 15-minute period. You can't have someone there for 15 minutes. This is something could happen. Not even, well, we'll have a person there one day randomly a week unless something happens, right? That's verifiable. That's falsifiable. I can find out about that. Nope, you just have to trust me. This was about them, again, ignoring me like they did during the elections, not just me, but all the candidates. I'm not in their party. They don't know me. They don't like me. That's my opinion. However, this week, Jennings looks like an elementary school. The police have been watching both streets. The messaging has went out. The traffic pattern's been immaculate. There's been no yelling or arguing between me and them. There's no reason for me to talk to anybody. I just walk my, we talk and we laugh. And despite how aggressive and annoying, I mean, I was really a paparazzi online for these guys. But despite all that, I have not gotten a single complaint from anybody on the campus. Nobody's emailed me, nobody's called me. I've asked Principal Delara many times to tell me if anybody's complaining about how I'm confronting people. Except for the people who I confront, I have heard from nobody. And some of them have come to my side. So what did I do? What I did is I expressed my free speech from a sidewalk. I held a one-man, basically I held a one-man public demonstration. Except I didn't just do it personally, I did it online 24/7.
And yet, I can't help but think we're in a city like New London, and you've got certain privileges. You're a white guy, you're a big guy, you're a stay-at-home dad right now, so you have some time.
I shouldn't have had to put this much effort into it. And could you imagine what would have happened to a black man my size, or a person of color, or someone with less means?
And even, a mom.
Right.
Would not feel comfortable confronting, but would also
Why
not
should
be
she?
listened.
Right.
So.
Yeah, like why? I mean,
Yeah.
like I'm a big white guy who obviously doesn't care about his personal safety, and I know like many people couldn't do that. I mean, the alternative to that would be to just do a public demonstration somewhere safer, like City Hall, or in front of the police department, in a bigger group, right? But not by themselves. Yeah. But that's the thing, is they were betting on that nobody's going to do that, and I'd have to be crazy, and maybe I am.
Yeah, I won't argue that point either way, but it does lead to a sense of like lack of responsiveness unless it's kind of forced. And I guess I'll move from that. We might come back to some of these other issues as well, but I wanted to talk about voter turnout. I've been ranting about voter turnout. Anyone who will listen for
Yeah.
the last 3 weeks since election night. And, next Monday, we're going to have the installation of the mayor and the city council. The public is invited. It's at 7:15 on Monday. I think that's December 4th. And at Holiday Inn, not at City Council chambers. I'm thinking at 7:15. So my guess is the councilors and mayor have to go to City Council to open the meeting at City Hall, and then they'll recess it and continue it to Holiday Inn at 7:15.
Swearing in, right.
And they'll have a swearing in and probably some kind of reception. And I'm probably not going to show up. I went to the swearing in two years ago, when I was ranting about it for like a month afterwards. It seemed not really the most appropriate or welcoming to people who weren't in that clique that was getting sworn in.
I can't understand that.
But it was kind of. I was invited, but but didn't feel
But
all
not
that welcome. But I wanted to put up some numbers to show what voter turnout is. We've had, since we came back to this mayoral form of election after 70 years of not having it. In 2011. There were 6 mayoral candidates. The Democrat, the Republican, the loser of the Democratic primary, who ran as a very aggressive write-in campaign, and 3 petitioning candidates. And 4,731 people voted in that election. And I'm assuming that the population of New London has been some relatively stable over the last 12 years.
Right.
It might have gone down maybe from 28,000 to 26,500 or something like that, but it hasn't
not
really
40%.
changed a lot. In 2015, there were only 2 candidates, the Democratic candidate, the Republican candidate, and 3,253 voted. In 2019, there were 3 candidates again. Frida ran in addition to Mike Passero and Marty Olson, and there were about 3,600. And if you had looked at those numbers in this last election, the number of people who voted for mayor were 2,722. That was down 25% from 4 years ago, with the same number of candidates. And the drop was true for all of us. Leon got fewer votes than Frida did, although his percentage was higher because the turnout in general was so much lower.
Right.
But if you look at the total number of people who voted for the major parties as well, that was down 26%, and the total vote was down 25%. So my question to you, and if anyone wants to call in and give some theory of why we had a 25% drop in voter turnout. 2019 was pre-COVID, but we have early voting now. We have same-day registration. We have a lot of different options for voting, and it didn't. We still had that drop of 25%, and other towns did not have this kind of drop.
It's a big drop, and a drop even from only 2 candidates.
Yeah,
a huge drop, from when we had 6. So.
Yeah, in fact, interestingly, the 3 previous mayoral elections, the total vote count for mayor varied quite a bit, but the total vote count for the people who ran as a Republican plus the Democrat, it was just about 3,250 all 3 of those years. And if there were extra candidates, they kind of added on more votes.
Dropped significantly from
But
there.
this time,
Right.
they've Democrat and Republican candidates together, and I am including the cross endorsement on working families line, which only amounted to between 100 and 150 votes. It wasn't a lot, but that went down 26%, and I'm at a loss really to try to figure out why we had such a drop when City Council is clearly has talked about increasing voter turnout. City Council did allocate money to open a new polling spot at Winthrop School. I personally do not think it will happen. I think its motivation was good, but there are rules for each district needs to have a certain population.
Right.
And I don't think the numbers would exactly work.
I mean, I guess time will tell. It's kind of pretty technical, but you know, at the end of the day, I think my fellow Greens would agree with me, at least, that New London does. The council and New London city government say a lot of things that they don't have any good faith in. You know, racism is a public health crisis.
Yeah.
And then they say things that just have nothing to. They love to make statements like we're for Medicare for all. It's like, well, that's great,
Yeah.
but that's way out of scope. It's really easy. It's really easy to talk, unless you're talking to me, and then apparently there's no point.
Well, and that was, in fact, that was one of the things that got Shanice to want to run for city council, because the racism is a public health crisis at a time when the city wasn't doing anything concrete, putting any money towards reparative justice, towards not a whole lot of money added to the budget to address those extra health concerns.
Sure. I got a collection of emails over the past 2 years from a variety of representatives and officials telling me how much they cared about the traffic problem at Jennings. But it was only this week that I actually got some sincere effort.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really easy to make public statements. I think that since COVID especially, New Londoners have lost confidence in their city government. I don't think that they have a mandate because they got most of the votes, especially when you look at the declining turnout. And on the campaign trail, I heard from many, many registered Democrats tell me that they were extremely disappointed by the fact that they didn't see any Democrats campaigning this year. They didn't see them canvassing. They didn't see them at debate. They didn't understand why they weren't coming out to tell them what they did for the past 2 years and what they plan to do for the next 2 years, or to discuss other ideas.
Yeah, I think that the elections seem more and more removed from our day-to-day life. 4 years ago, there were several debates that were sponsored by very different groups, the League of Women Voters, New London Landmarks, the Neighborhood Alliance, groups that had all different political bents. Some were truly nonpartisan, some had an axe to grind, but pretty much almost all the candidates went to all of them. And I'm convinced that 10 or 15 years ago, if a candidate didn't go to attend debates, even if they had a good reason, their chances of getting elected were much lower. I remember, Elizabeth Garcia Gonzalez ran for Board of Ed the same year I got in, and she had some health issues. She missed some debates, and she didn't get in that year, even though she was an incumbent. She had done a good job on the board, but just the message of not being at the debates just lost her enough votes to not quite make it.
Yeah.
And now it seems as though I guess more people, there isn't the expectation. And when there are no debates, then there isn't much for the newspaper to report on. And it just seemed as though it was a very, very hard year to get the message out to large masses of people. You know,
But we did have the one debate, and 100% of our candidates showed up. I think something like 40 to 50% of Republican candidates showed up. And I saw Nathan Caron and
yeah, Danny Cruz maybe?
I believe Danny Cruz was there as well. But I saw Board of Ed members, sitting Board of Ed members of the Democrat Party. They showed up too. Nathan was like, "Are we debating, Keith?" And I'm like, "No, there's no debate." And he sat there next to me fuming that out of 15 candidates, one person, Jeffrey Hart, the only person who wasn't an incumbent, showed up. And, of course, there was only one debate. Of course, all but 14 people couldn't do it. That strains credulity. And I'm kind of curious about if they made any overtures or efforts to create debates that they felt safe in, because one of the criticisms I heard from them is that Hearing Youth Voices is a biased, and I mean, they've published the debate, and you could see for yourself if it was biased or not. I didn't hear any complaints from anybody attending.
No, in fact, I heard one individual say, I believe that Hearing Youth Voices has a bias as an organization, but that the debate was run fairly.
Sure, and human beings have biases. Organizations run by human beings are no different, but we can make a good faith attempt to be fair. And they did. It was co-sponsored by Fresh. It was hosted by All Souls Church, and it was a very professional, excellent debate that would have been really excellent if there had been more than 3 counselors and 2 mayoral candidates.
Yeah, and it is interesting to me because in the past, I think it was 4 years ago, because I was running for city council, and the Neighborhood Alliance debates, some of the Democratic candidates did not want to attend. Most, in the end, did attend, but not all. But because Neighborhood Alliance was kind of seen as what's Lot has turned into, as a very conservative group. But to me, it's actually really important. We're all in one city. We have problems we have to deal with as a community. We can't not talk to people we don't agree with.
That's the appointed time. That's the appropriate time. For everybody complaining, especially you representatives out there, about how inappropriate I was about my problems, which were really city problems, and I wasn't the only one, and you could have answered within 2 years when I did the appropriate thing. But that is the appropriate time and place where we're supposed to be talking about those things, and it really appeared to me like you couldn't be bothered. So what are we left with? We're left with an old guy with a cane, yelling on a sidewalk and posting sassy, posts on social media, which.
So if anyone, the phone number is up. If anyone wants to call, in particular, many of us are concerned about the voter turnout, but I really fear that if our government becomes much less participatory than it already is, and we've seen that trend, that it can't stay a democracy.
Right. And it doesn't look like a functioning democracy to me. It just doesn't. One of my friends had pointed out, it's like, the city has really made this issue personal with you. That's how it looks. I said, that's how it feels. Why? Why? Over something that we have, like a $24 million police budget, 6 square miles. And it was just everything they could think, every excuse they could think of. I was, one time, what really got me talking about this was I was trapped in my parking space on Williams. because multiple double parked cars had parked and walked to the school and left me there, and I'm sitting there for 10 minutes, stuck in my parking space, which is why I never parked there again. You know, and then almost getting in accidents a couple of times, you know, just watching people almost getting accidents. Senseless, pointless. And it was just one little problem. And I'm wondering what it's like for others out there. I made the flip comment that it's easier to fight City Hall than it is the Board of Ed. Two shows ago I was on here. And I have to retract that. The district, they met with me twice with plans. They took me seriously. They were slow, but in their defense, I feel that they felt that they have been doing enough. They have been doing something, and that they need to be met halfway by the city. And this is something that I've been watching for a long time, that there seems to be an adversarial relationship between our Board of Education and the city and the district of the city, and I don't understand that either. But it's got to stop. And if it doesn't stop, you know, and the voting continues to decline, then what you're going to have is more public demonstrations of people's discontent.
Which is also, I mean, sometimes necessary.
That's
but
what we're constitutionally
but
guaranteed.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't have to get that
would be
way,
nice to
especially over parking.
Just move forward on we're really going to be dealing with a lot of big problems over the next decade.
Yeah.
We're a coastal community.
We're losing
the
revenue.
Climate
Right.
is an issue. The whole issue of how cities are funded is very inequitable in this state. We have Connecticut has one of the widest income gaps of any state in the union. I don't know if it's number 1, 2, or 3, but it's in that range. So there are a ton of people who are just really struggling to, you know, keep body and soul together.
I mean, rents. We you know, to harp on that traffic issue. It's not just at the school. We've seen statistically an increase in reckless driving since COVID. And everybody who drives through town has a story of people running red lights, stop signs, speeding. And I realize that's a challenge. It's not just cut and dry like mine.
Right.
But these are things that the residents and the visitors in the city need addressed, and they need plans. And Shanice and Aaron and Jeffrey Hart, Aaron Ide, Shanice Austin, they all agreed one of the biggest weaknesses of our council is poor planning, you know, poor planning for the future. And what I have watched for the past 30 years here is the mayor and the council focused on economic redevelopment. And with the past 4 years or 6 years, that's largely been new big development from out of town and out of state contractors of apartment and condos that we don't need and New Londoners can't afford. And that's a fact. It's driving up rents. It's exacerbating our problem. It's not drawing on businesses, and we're getting nothing for it. Now, I have seen cities like Scranton, Baltimore, Austin redevelop their economies, and it's always the same pattern. The city's job is to do for the residents and the visitors what they can't do for themselves that they need done. That means trash collection, that means infrastructure, that means schools, that means public safety, that means parks and recreation. It does not mean making deals with contractors. When the city is a place that's affordable and nice to live in, the businesses come. I'm not going to open a business here where people are screaming about parking and they can't, people can't afford their apartments. What are they going to spend money on me for?
Yeah, and my issue has largely been that, anyone, any individual, any family, you diversify your savings, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there are some companies that if you invested in 10 years ago, you might make a ton of money, but you might lose a ton of
money, right?
Right. So to be resilient, you have to have diversification, and we don't have a very diversified economy, which is, I guess, we only have about 5-7 minutes left, something like that. So I wanted to kind of go from that into, 2 years ago when Eddie ran for city council, he was talking about how many of the downtown businesses at that time were arts related,
Right.
and how important that was. Of course, COVID has been really rough on small businesses, but it's still the fact that we need to diversify, and the arts community seems like one good place to do it. Right. So what I wanted to get to was, you did something this campaign that I think you did not plan on doing at all. Leon for mayor was kind of our arts
guy, yeah, right.
Our arts candidate, the one who was immersed in this, and you kind of got yourself involved in an unexpected artistic campaign angle.
I
So
did.
Tell us about how that happened.
Well, you know that a long time ago, I had dreams of becoming a visual artist, and since the time I was in junior high school, I wanted to be a drawer and a painter, and particularly a pencil artist and charcoals, which is what I studied, and I built a portfolio on. And in New London, I came to New London my senior year in 1989, but I left after that for about 4 or 5 years. I did some missionary work. I went to art school, and I came back to New London because I love New London, and New London's an art city, and I'm like, I'm gonna open up here. And I had shows, and but I wasn't making it. I wasn't ready for it. I didn't know what I was doing. I needed more work. And so I went back to school, went to business school, and became an accountant instead, preparing financials for small to medium-sized corporations and businesses in New London County. And that's how I fed myself. And I didn't really have time or money to do drawing and painting anymore. I still have an easel in the basement somewhere. But I started doing more photography to just keep my skills up and just fulfill myself. And during the campaign, as a way to meet New Londoners and to de-stress, I started posting pictures of architectural photos of New London's buildings that I was seeing, that I appreciated for my entire time here, but I was seeing as I was canvassing and stuff like that. And I put it on New London Strong, which is an excellent Facebook page. You should check it out. And it exploded. And it resulted in a offer from Studio 33, who's displaying my work right now. And I've got offers for more shows next year. So you should be seeing my photography probably in the Hygienic. If you go down to Studio 33, which is I think 140 Bank Street, you will see my series of pictures called Art Portals on Bank. And they're pictures of doors. Maybe you'll like them.
So that was something you really had not thought about ahead of time. And it's interesting to me because a lot of people in New London post photos, but it's mostly beach photos, sunrise over the Thames River, and yours are very urban.
Very urban, yeah.
And they're phone photos, right?
They're phone photos from my iPhone 11, yeah, because that's what I had. I do have professional camera equipment, but I wasn't dragging that out canvassing with me. And that's what's beautiful about what I'm displaying now. These were shot with an iPhone 11. They were printed at Walgreens. They were framed at Michael's. Really, get out there and shoot pictures. And I'm seeing more pictures of buildings and our architecture on New London Strong. I'm seeing people take pictures. Do it.
And I just went to a meeting, a kind of a workshop presentation a week ago about form-based code. And I'm thinking that, these kind of streetscape photos and architectural photos are one good way to kind of promote kind of zoning that focuses more on maintaining the integrity and the warmth of our streetscapes.
I sure hope so, because the whaling industry they bequeathed us a wealth of architectural and art beauty that's world class. The wealth here was drawing world class architects and builders and artists and artisans. And that's, you see it all around downtown. You see it in the historic buildings and homes all around the city. They were left to us, and if we appreciate that and we want to keep them, then we have to invest in that.
Yeah, it's a whole different philosophy of zoning, that you're thinking more about the sidewalk and how vibrant it is, more than exactly what people are doing inside their building or behind their building.
Yeah.
And so keep on taking pictures.
Yeah, and everybody else, it's like you see, it's like show New Londoners and the world, how beautiful our city is, how much you appreciate it, and why, through your eye.
Well, thank you, Keith.
No worries.
For everyone. For everyone watching, if you want to go see the installation of our mayor and city councilors, it will be at Holiday Inn on Monday at 7:15, and I think their first regular meeting will be on Tuesday, and I'm not sure which is more important to show up at, but I think it is important for the people who were elected. I wish them well, but I want them to remember that they're working for all of us.
I'll be there on Tuesday. They don't want me there for the swearing in.
Well, this is open to the public, I think. Next week, my guest is going to be Michelle Bicking, who is going to be talking about a relatively new project of hers called Project Tunnel Vision. I believe it is a project that lends support to parents, especially parents who are living in stressed circumstances. But we'll learn more about it next week, because I honestly don't know a whole lot. So anyone, get in touch with us if you have any issues, if you have any ideas on how to get people to vote. Please get in touch with us. And thanks, Keith, and we'll see you around town.
Yeah, we'll see you around town. I'm looking forward to these next 2 years. I think big things are happening.
I hope so. I think that if people do, keep showing up, some things are going to happen. And one thing that did happen during this last election that I think was useful and helpful is that there were some people who maybe didn't have a voice before, who have found their voice and who have kind of gotten a more crystallized idea of what they want from city government, who they should be supporting, what kind of projects should be supported.
I mean, they say you got to hit rock bottom sometimes first. Sometimes that's what happens.
So, yes. So thanks again.
When the rain don't fall, that's when you know you're gonna go dry. When the rain don't fall.